All right, let's talk about one of the pretty much the biggest story, especially of the evening or the late games on Week 18 in the NFL was the Chargers Raiders with one of the most exciting, mind-boggling, high-stakes finishes I can remember seeing in NFL history. It was crazy. Coming down the stretch, the Raiders and Chargers, if they tie, they both get in. If somebody loses, the loser doesn't get in, and the Steelers get in. Raiders are, you know, driving down the field on about the 40-yard line, 39-yard line, and they're in field goal range for a long field goal, but they could also just sit on the ball and make the playoffs. Clearly, they're trying to win. They're not in a formation that is that says they're going to clock it or anything like that. They're not calling on a timeout, even though they had a timeout. They're going to run the ball more than likely to try to get better field position to get a little bit better of a field goal. But the Chargers are in the game. They're in the playoffs if they simply let the clock run out or if the clock runs out on the Raiders. Brandon Staley calls a timeout, which then allows the Raiders to run a traditional run up the gut play with Josh Jacobs. He gets the first down, puts them in extremely makeable field goal range. They actually then call their timeout with 3 seconds left, kick a field goal, and the Chargers lose and go home, and the Steelers make the playoffs. So what struck me was there's a clip of Justin Herbert on the sidelines. And he turns to a teammate and he says, I never wanted a tie so bad in my life. And so I'm like, yes, he's got the right idea. But what in the blue devil hell is Brandon Staley thinking about? And so I've heard this whole thing, this argument of, well, he really didn't cost them anything by causing the timeout. And I'm not putting all of this on Brandon Staley, right? Because there's a chance the Raiders get the first down anyway. The Chargers haven't been able to stop the run all year anyway. There's a chance it happens. There's a chance that, Raiders super clutch kicker. I mean, the guy has been just a monster all year. There's a chance he just makes a 56-yarder anyway that beats you. They call their own timeout. But my thought of it was, how do you not see that you hurt your chances by calling that timeout? How do you not see that? So in my opinion, I just don't see any way at all where that was a smart thing to do. I don't know. Do you guys see that differently? What do you say, Paul?
I put you won't, Brian. Don't worry. I will. I put it all on Brandon Staley. To me, and I get it, the Raiders weren't in kneeling formation, but you couldn't have possibly. They would have been destroyed the next day if they took a knee to just let the clock expire. Hey, we both made it. They would have been eviscerated by the media. So while they weren't kneeling it, they were pretty lackadaisical coming up to the line. Oh, yeah, roll. And the Chargers calling a timeout there, and then the Raiders getting the first down. They said, you know what? YOLO, we'll kick the field goal. If he doesn't call that timeout, I truly believe the Raiders just kind of run the ball, give somewhat of a lackadaisical effort, clock's rolling. They're like, wow, if we do nothing, we're automatically in the playoffs. If we attempt a field goal, it gets blocked, returned to the house, we lose, and we're out. I think we're just going to run it and let the clock roll out. I think that's what would have happened. I think that was firmly in the Raiders' mind. And then when they called the timeout and got the nice run, they said, screw it, we'll go for it. It is unbelievable. Brandon Staley, I'm analytics guy. Look at this and this. And all that stupid stuff in the game. No, he doesn't deserve a pass. Brandon Staley's an idiot. He's the reason that we were all robbed of not seeing Justin Herbert in the playoffs. It's Brandon Staley's fault. He needs to eat it. And I don't care what he says. Oh, the timeout didn't change the thing. It 100%. It changed the entire dynamic, or they would both be in the playoffs with a tie, and the Steelers would be whining in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I it's very hard for me to argue with that too much. I just don't. I just don't understand. I don't understand how he rationalized that. I mean, I'm like literally. I don't understand. I don't understand how. I mean, the Raiders ran a run play, just over a minute left in the overtime period to got it to 3rd and 4, and the clock's just running. Chargers, Raiders, they're just looking at it, and it gets all the way down. Raiders, like you said, taking their sweet time, getting to the line of scrimmage. They are not in any kind of hurry. This ball is on the 39-yard line, and Staley lets it run down to 38 seconds, and he calls it. Like what? Like my thought is, if you're gonna call this timeout, why not call it earlier? Why are you waiting for 38 seconds to call it?
Let me give my take here. Yeah, I totally agree with you when it comes to I guess they didn't see the right defense, in 5 seconds. So I think that's what I'm gonna say. Like, that's totally on Staley and the defense. They didn't know what they were doing up until like 5 seconds left. I think you saw the linebackers looking back and forth saying, what are we doing here? I think they didn't even have 2 guys on the field too. I think there was a wide receiver completely open on the right side. So I think that's why Staley called the timeout. And I'm going to go off the deep end right here. I think you two are off base with this whole Staley thing. I think you guys aren't really getting the whole picture, because I'll be honest with you, I think your takes I probably had at the time of that at that series. I think, look, you call a timeout and they didn't have the right people. I think they had 9 guys on the field. Count the players on the field when that happened. They had 9 players.
How did it work with 11?
Either way, that's the reason why you should be so pissed. Not at the timeout, at the fact that they couldn't defend the run. I think they gave up 170 yards in the game. If you want to get pissed at the personnel, get pissed at the players because they couldn't stop them on 3rd and 4, and then the next play. But if you're gonna just sit here and cry about the timeout, it had nothing to do with the timeout. They were gonna run a play anyway. So I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It's still on Staley because of the management aspect of it.
Look, you're talking about the timeout. Fine, you have to call timeout there because they didn't get it right. If you want to criticize Staley and the coaching on 9 guys on the field and they didn't know what they were doing, fine. But you guys aren't talking about that. You're talking about just calling a timeout and that they were going to kneel. They were not going to kneel. If they kneeled, they were not going to kneel, one, and they weren't going to lay down because they were going to play the Chiefs if they tied.
I never said they were going to kneel. I never said they were going to kneel. What I said is, I don't think it's as bad or as simple as, oh, you called a timeout, they were going to kneel. What are you doing? No, I don't think it was as simple as that. What I think is that you did not give yourself a better chance to make the playoffs by calling that timeout.
I don't agree.
Because there's 38 seconds left in the game, and the Raiders were not about to call timeout. The Raiders were going to run a play, and the Raiders were going to run a run play. So the Chargers had 10 guys on the field. The Chargers had 10 guys on the field that I can see, right? So even if you run the run play, right, and he's either got to bust it for a first down like he did anyway, or he's got to bust it for even a bigger play than that. Carr was not going to put that ball in the air, even with fewer people. We
don't know that.
I'm looking at the guy. You don't know that. There was nobody wide open.
You don't know that. He could have very well hiked the ball, thrown it to the guy on the right, and he has a wide open touchdown.
The guy wasn't all wide open. The 25's right in front of him.
There's a picture where the wide receiver on the right side is wide open.
Right now, I'm looking at the whole entire field right now. 26 is right in front of their upstart wide receiver, whose name escapes me right now, number 7.
Zay Jones.
Zay Jones. He's right in front of Zay Jones. And now, true enough, the Chargers did only have 10 guys on the field. They only had 10 guys on the field.
Yeah.
But my whole point is, do I think it's as preposterous as some people are saying? No. But I do think that he did not increase his chances of winning by calling the timeout. To me, he increased his chances of losing.
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much the same.
Brandon Staley's going to be a good head coach. I do believe that. However, though, he's taken some risky gambles. I mean, there was that Ravens game, and then there was another game where he ended up going for like 2-point conversion when he couldn't settle for the tie. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, it's like I feel like that he needs to trust more his heart than the math. He needs to trust more of that along those lines. Now, again, he was educated in this game. He was educated against a Raiders team that was also in this situation. That's not saying that Brandon Staley is going to be a terrible head coach. I think that he has a lot of potential, but this game was an educational lesson